Oh my god. Hello and welcome back. My name is Sean and today we're going to be talking about Guards by Terry Pratchett. So this isn't the first book that I have read in the Discworld series. It's the third. I have done Small Gods on the channel. I read Mort a while ago. And this is my first time getting into the Watch series. And this was a ride. If nothing else of this video and you're still with me for the first 30 seconds, absolutely go read it. I recommend it. It is a great book, and everything I will be doing from this moment on will be purely to convince you that you should read this book because it was really great and I want to talk about it with people. So before I get into the outline or anything about what the book is about, just to sell you on why I think you should read this book, this is one of the most humorous books I think I've ever read. Normally when I'm reading a book, maybe I'll get like a light little chuckle or an exhale a breath. You know, I'll read a passage and or if it's really funny. This is one of the first books I can remember in a long time where I'd read a passage and out loud belly laugh. And I'm not just reading this from Casual One. Sometimes I'll pick up these books after like a long day at work. Maybe I go to the gym, do some hard training where I'm just dripping with sweat, exhausted, and even in that tired state, like I just start like dying laughing, like reading different portions of this book. And I think a lot of it has to do with Terry Pratchett's ability to be very quotable. If you were to search up guards quotes, you'd find like the Goodreads page, and it's just quote after quote after quote, or every other descriptor, it seems like, was just handcrafted to be it's just like as humorous and memorable as possible. I don't normally annotate books or really do those type of notes on there. I will read a section, write down what I thought about it, and then continue on. But if I wanted to do a highlighter of this book, it would just be a yellow mess of just almost everything would be filled up. And that's just super rare in my experience. The character arcs in this are one of the best character arcs I've seen. Normally when I see a writer trying to do a cast or ensemble of characters, it's kind of a struggle. Like, you generally have a focus on one character and it's hard to get that real true camaraderie like focused on there. Or maybe you have like one character that's experiencing the group and you could have memorable characters in there, but everyone had their own distinct place in there, and the whole book felt like what would it be like to read a Benny Hill sequence. Like, so many different threads were happening, so many different characters were so unique and distinct where there wasn't really a main character per se, and you're just watching this like brotherhood of guards just transform and rise up to the task that they're faced with. It was absolutely marvelous. There's just so many threads and red herrings that were happening at the same time, and all this tension and build up, and you know, is this going to be a joke? Is it going to be serious? And that's one of the other cool things about this book. Even though it was hilarious, it's absurdist fantasy, and it's very much removed from our normal reality, you have so many of these like threads of seriousness that are actually like routed through and that give this book a lot of weight. Neil Gaiman had this quote that I'm going to poorly paraphrase when he was referring to Terry Pratchett's like work in particular, that was, just because something is serious doesn't mean that it can't be funny. The opposite of funny isn't serious, the opposite of funny is unfunny. So Terry Pratchett was very good at this, and in this book, you know, we're in the most of the perspective of the City Watch, the guards at the time, as they're in a very corrupt city trying to deal with that corruption and what it means to be a civil servant, and, you know, what happens or what is the necessary evils that happens with trying to govern a large group of people. You have a lot of these things coming up: corruption, how the city is governed. You're seeing a lot of reflections in that today, like 30 years later. And the way it was handled was just such a delicate touch. I mean, Small Gods I love just for the way it handled religion. You know, the way he handled that was super respectful, well done, and most of all made you think. And in this book, I thought it did very well with that, with the context of what it's like to be a police officer or what it's like to be in a city that's being governed. There's a lot of politics at play, and it was just really well done. Now, getting into more of the minor and major spoiler territories, so it's fair warning, I will be talking about the book in this book video. If you want to just go and check out the book, just fresh, I actually recommend that. But if you have read it, wanted to see my reaction, or if you are fine with spoilers, then let's dive right ahead. So getting into what the book is more about, I tried to do a outline for this previously, but trying to give the play-by-play, there's just so many threads that are moving at the same time. I started talking for like 5 minutes and realized that was way too much for me to cut down or put into the video. But to give you some of the bare bones, just general gist, is that we are following the City Watch. We are following the City Watch as they are in a current very dismal state. Ankh-Morpork is the city works, but it's done in a very pragmatic way. The guy running it, the patrician, he has enacted such laws like basically legalizing crime and giving each of the different types of crime a guild hall, so that way they can actually effectively regulate it. It's easier for them in their world to say like, hey, you're the Thieves Guild, you are only allotted this much crime a day. If you go over it, we're going to fine you, rather than actually paying the guard more to go there and, bust everyone up. But early on in this book, we find that we have a bit of an odd duck in the dwarven community. This is a human named Carrot who has been raised with the dwarves, a little bit of like the Elf the Christmas movie type situation. And he gets sent off to the City Watch to become more of a man and really figure out what it is to be human. And part of that is that dwarves are very literal. That will be the punchline of many of a joke and a very strong plot point later on. And basically, Carrot's just a very literal, young, idealistic person. Is in great shape, just an absolute specimen of a beast. His name is Carrot because his body shape is like that of a carrot where it like tapers down. And basically this young new guard shows up to the city that is very corrupt. All the guards have basically been underpaid, corrupt, given up. They're all basically drunks. And with that dwarven like integrity and stoutness and having memorized the entirety of the ancient laws that he had a book of, he just goes apart and just makes a spark in that City Watch where they start caring again. Just as a bit of his plot point, like one of the first things he does is he finds the leader of the Thieves Guild and was like, hey, crime's bad, and the rest of them not realizing that crime is indeed legal in the current system that they have set up. And through these actions, he's able to spark life back into the guard just in time to deal with a cult that is on the move that is trying to take control of the city. And these threads spin around with that group of different guards and characters, and it culminates in a very hilarious, very cool way that has a lot of weird notes of seriousness. But really, I'd say the core of this book is the journey of the city guard. Now, in this book, we have dragons, we have multiple different races, we have a crazy dragon lady, we have the philosophical topics of what does it mean to actually be a civil servant, how do you actually do good police work, and, if you are a ruler, what is the pragmatic evil necessary in actually ruling humans? Are humans good? Are they bad? Are they just selfish? And these are all topics that are delved with masterful deftness, and you just keep alternating between humor and laughing to what's going to happen next. This is very exciting to have Terry Pratchett drop philosophical bombs on you where you just kind of sit there thinking, it's like, this actually applies to my life right now. It just all in all was a very good book. I thought I was going to fly through it, but there was enough points of it where I had to put the book down just because I had my mind blown in some small way where I just wanted to savor it a bit more, so I had to fold it, put it down, switch to something else, and this was a absolute delight to read. I think where Terry was the strongest in this book, though, was having to do with the character work. We are following the City Watch right now in its current form. It only has about 4 or 5 different people in there. There are some very notable side characters, however, and just everything so unique and well tied together where it just was an awesome just combination of everything. Normally when you're doing these type of ensemble type story cast, it's like you generally focus on one main character and then you have the cast characters supporting it, but in this series in this book we just felt like we were switching between character to character. No one was really the main character, but everyone was their own important thread that just built up this really crazy story and just was an awesome thing to read. And the character work in some of the other books, not to spoil it, but knowing a bit more about how death works and some of the stuff I know about the magicians, it was just very interesting to read. I mean, one of the characters was a librarian turned orangutan that's still a librarian, and he would either pantomime, say ook or eek, yet super memorable, always very with it and cognizant. And just as a orangutan with literally 3 separate lines of dialogue, he was just very engaging. And if you can make an orangutan that only says 3 things very engaging, what can you do with the rest of the characters? And Pratchett really delivered with that. This is something I might want to dive in more as I read more into Terry Pratchett, just because you get more into like the philosophy and some of the politics that are presented in here. But there was like a dance of like philosophical themes like in here that I definitely think are going to be explored later on. You know, the Watch series has, I think 4 or 6 books in it. Regardless, it continues on, and from what I've heard is it has some of the best villain work that is done, especially with the guards versus the villain work. And there's this dance between the idealism of like guard work versus like human nature to be like needlessly cruel, or that we're all so self-interested that it's less we're trying to strive to an ideal, and instead that we're just trying to limit the actual harm that humanity can happen. In the very end of the book, there is a talk between like the captain of the guard and the patrician, the guy running everything, and it really just came out of nowhere, but it was like you had these like clear philosophical differences, and both seem pretty well rationed and very reasoned, but you can see there that there is going to be an oncoming strife between the two, and just that dance of ideas of which one's right, and that idealism versus that pragmatism, I was super excited about. And you're digging through a lot of humor to get there, and a lot of things happen, but that to me is kind of the genius of Pratchett, is that you take these ideas and you dance around them and you have them nested in there, and they're that much more memorable because it's not just someone going on some long-winded moral philosophy essay on why this or why that, but we just have this like live action of humor and very quotable dialogue and just fun book to read, where you leave it after with like a message and you can sit there and it's like, I was not expecting that. But I could talk all day about Terry Pratchett and only being 3 books in here. I'm very excited to continue on with the series. This year, I mentioned in my 2023 plans and TBR that I wanted to get a lot more into Discworld and Terry Pratchett in general. So you guys can expect more of that, and I will limit myself from just rambling about moral idealism and the philosophy of law enforcement. Now, for this book, I have nothing negative to say. It is an absolute masterpiece. I love Terry Pratchett. I'd still put Small Gods above it, but that's also a single self-contained book series, so we'll see where that sits in comparison to reading more of the Watch part of Discworld. I know for me, and I've seen this as a common thing with people online, is where do I start with Discworld? And I'll link a graph. And there should be a graphic right here that I'll also link down below. And one of the more common places to start generally is the Watch. Either starting with Small Gods, the Watch, or the Death series. And it really just depends on what type of flavor you're watching. If you want more politics, or if you want just a single introduction to Terry Pratchett's ideas. Small Gods was great and is remaining in the top 10 of my favorite all-time books. And the Watch, Guards is really good. I have to see how it pulls off as a series, but I think if you're just looking to have fun, laugh, and like also have yourself think a little bit, then Guards is a great place to start. And I will be getting further into this series, so you can expect it later. As always, I thank you guys for your time. Thanks for watching. Excuse the interruptions, and I'll see you guys later. Take it easy.